Welcome back, everybody. Let us do an itty bitty little intro to literature critique, especially poetry. We're covering the Northern Renaissance right now, and Shakespeare was part of that action. So while we're in the Northern Renaissance, we might as well take our 5 minutes of Shakespeare because we can't just pass it up and look at some lit. We're doing art critiques every single week, and now let's see how we can transfer that observational, think about the context that you know along with what you're looking at to say something clever. So let's get into Shakespeare here. Little mini lecture. All right. So there is quite a lot of work by Shakespeare. We are not going to be reading any of the major histories, comedies, tragedies. They are fun to get into. I would not have believed you until I was in grad school and ended up taking a Shakespeare and film class. That was so much fun. So I think there's something in Shakespeare for everybody. So we're going to start small as opposed to tedious and painful, because I would like to give you a positive Shakespeare experience in a college class. Not that you haven't maybe had some before, but let's do another one. We're going to look at sonnets for this unit. So a sonnet is a 14-line poem. He wrote many. It takes 14 lines. A book of sonnets is like a great bathroom reader. They go by quick. They're punchy, they're snappy, and they're done real fast. You can do your critique on it after you've read it for 30 seconds. A few things that we need to know about Shakespeare before we look at our sonnet. P.S. I know some people go by the numbering system, but just for ease, which is also the most accepted way, whatever the first line of the poem is, that's the title for the sonnet, okay? So we're going to be looking at "My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun," which is the first line of the sonnet. Some key terms we need to be able to talk about sonnets. Well, the one that we're looking at in particular right now, and many of them are, is a blazon. So a blazon was a term for a poem that describes a woman's beauty using metaphors and similes. I think you're very familiar with this, lips like a red rose and, eyes like the sea after a storm. Those are, I don't know, that one's from Princess Bride. But a blazon is a very sort of common form of romantic poetry during this period. They've become sort of cliche by, 500 years later, valid. But you're very used to this idea of comparing a beautiful woman to some beautiful thing as a simile or a metaphor. All right, so a sonnet. Let's look at this. 14 lines. The structure is 3 quatrains, and like quatrain, quarter, that means 4 lines, okay? So you can see here A, B, A, B. So lines 1 and 3 rhyme. Lines 2 and 4 rhyme at the end of the line. And then you got your second quatrain, they rhyme independently. You got your third quatrain, they rhyme independently. And then the finale, so you got 4, 8, 12 in the 3 quatrains. And then the finale is 1 couplet. And a couplet, just like a couple, is 2. So it's 2 lines. So lines 13 and 14, GG. They rhyme, boom, boom, right next to each other. Or at least have some sort of rhyming scheme. So a turn is the last terminology piece that I think you need to understand to move on to the next slide. It's where the quatrains are building up to an idea and then it sort of takes a little twist at the end. I mean, I guess twist and turn, a plot twist. You kind of get new meaning from what the couplet adds to the poem. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a plot twist. It's also like the punchline of a joke, but we're not telling jokes, if that makes sense. Like, those really long form jokes. I had an uncle who was so into telling like 5-minute story jokes for the one punchline at the end, and you're like, hey. So you're listening, but like you're aware that he's telling a joke. So you're like listening and you're kind of waiting for what we're building towards, right? So that's kind of how you read a sonnet. You look at the quatrains and you're like, okay, we got this thing going on in quatrain 1. We're adding to that and developing that through 2 and 3. But you're like, wait for it, because there's going to be some sort of turn in those last 2 lines that kind of like add a second meaning or twist the meaning in a particular way. So that's the fun of reading sonnets, is that you're sort of building one thing through the quatrains. And then you get this turn in the final couplet. So let us just check out this one that I think is just fabulous. All right, so we start with our first quatrain. Let's look at what's going on here. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. Oops, that's supposed to be like, not line. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. This is sounding like an insult, right? Like, be like, man, yeah, no, she snowy white breasts. No, hers are kind of like leather saddlebags. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very almost insulting. As you can see, the blazon where you're like, oh, beautiful woman, beautiful things. Like her lips are like coral from the sea. He's making fun of blazons here, right? Like, by his point, he's already sort of commenting on how cliche the like standard of like coral and roses and snow that we've got going on. Like we got the same three things that all women are. They're roses, they're coral, they're snow. Their eyes sparkle like sapphires, yada yada. So he's making fun of blazons more than he's sort of, I guess, making fun of the woman in this particular first quatrain. But at the same time, if someone's like, baby, baby, let me read you a love poem, this is kind of a rough start. All right, let's look at the second quatrain. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses I see in her cheeks. And in some perfumes there is more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. All right, so second quatrain, we've got this eye reflection on what he sees first person. Kind of go with like roses and perfume in lines 1 and 3. And then we've got, you know, reeking. If somebody says that your breath reeks, that's not good. So it's starting to get kind of insulting. I think I'd be starting to get a little bit pissed off or annoyed by now if I was sitting there being read beautiful poetry. So you're getting a reaction. Like he's going extreme here. All right, so third, let's move on to what he's got to say in round 3 here. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. So he's moving to how he loves his mistress, despite her poetic shortcomings, which is kind of a little setup, final couplet term. And yet by heaven, I think my love is rare, as any she belied with false compare. So he is turning the whole idea of a blazon on its head. I think that's like the best sick burn in Northern Renaissance poetry, but let's unpack that so you can see why you should agree with me. That final couplet, he loves her because, and he sees her as a real woman. He's not like, oh my gosh, she floats and her poop doesn't stink, and she's like a goddess who just like was born from the angels. Like the first time she gets sick and you're like, ew, snot, I guess she's not a goddess. Like off you go then, right? He sees her for what she really is. She is not roses and a goddess and snowy white. She is what she is. And he loves her exactly for who she is, and he's not blinded with rose-tinted glasses on the fact that she is a human with flaws. So he's not living in a fantasy. He sees her exactly how she is, and that is who he loves. So he's calling all other poems that are blazons insincere with this final couplet. It's just, you know, lies and someone not even seeing you. It's a satire of all other blazons, just like we see in these first 3 quatrains. Like it's like a blazon, but it's like an anti-blazon because we're saying how much she isn't all those things and making fun of it. And then the final couplet criticizes all blazons for being insincere. So he's made them all seem weaker than this poem. So he's giving you sort of this no viable alternative conclusion here, where he's saying, you know, all blazons are insincere lies, and that person isn't really seeing you for who you are, and they don't really love you. So he's just now like slammed, like WWE SmackDown, hundreds if not thousands of love poems that other people had written, saying like, yeah, but if you even want to hear anything that means anything, step right over here, ladies. It's an incredible, like, argumentative strategy love poem that trashes an entire genre of very popular romantic poetry during this time, making his the best one. So it starts out like a horrible insult and it turns out to be like the most genuinely romantic poem of the genre because it's kind of the anti-blazon. I hope that helps with your critique assignment this week. Just look at them, sort of take each quatrain as a chunk. What's going on there? How are we building off the last one? What's happening new? And then what does that couplet do to the end? If you look through your checklist, things to look for in poetry, you'll see things like the rhyming scheme, the rhythm of the speech. You gotta say poetry out loud. You can't just read it. So you're gonna miss stuff with like the rhythm. So be sure to read it out loud to yourself. I mean, if you have to go sit in a parked car because your roommates will make fun of you, then tell them to like get jobs or try harder at school or something. But say the poem out loud, one quatrain at a time, listen for the rhyming scheme, listen for the rhythm, and then think about the content, sort of one at a time. What are we building towards? And then what are we turning with that final couplet? So enjoy your sonnets. Let me know which ones are your favorites. Maybe read through 4 or 5. They take 30 seconds each. Figure out the one that you kind of want to talk about, and I look forward to your critiques.